Let's be honest, a woman doesn't always remember the man who gave her the most attention. Sometimes she remembers the man who made her feel something she couldn't easily explain. The man whose words didn't chase her, impress her, or beg for approval. His presence felt calm, his confidence felt natural, and somehow, after the conversation ended, she found herself replaying his words in her head. That's where most men misunderstand female psychology. You might think attraction comes from saying the perfect compliment, sending the perfect text, or constantly reminding her how interested you are, but genuine connection rarely works that way. When a man communicates from insecurity, she can often feel the pressure underneath his words. Even when the words sound romantic, the hidden message can be, "Please validate me, please choose me, please reassure me that I'm enough," and pressure changes everything. A confident man communicates differently. He doesn't speak to her as though she is above him. He doesn't speak to her as though he needs to win her approval. He speaks to her as an equal human being, with warmth, curiosity, and self-respect. That difference can be incredibly powerful. Imagine she tells you about something she cares deeply about. Instead of immediately trying to impress her or turn the conversation toward yourself, you actually listen. You ask questions because you're genuinely interested. You notice the emotion behind what she says. You might calmly respond, "I can tell that really matters to you." That sentence isn't complicated, but it communicates something many people rarely experience: being understood without being judged. And here's where the psychological shift happens. People naturally tend to remember interactions where they felt seen, respected, and emotionally safe. That doesn't mean every woman will become obsessed with you, and it certainly doesn't mean there is some magic phrase that can control another person's feelings. Attraction isn't a formula. But the way you communicate can absolutely influence the quality of connection you create. The man who constantly performs for attention eventually becomes predictable. The man who is comfortable being himself becomes memorable. He can tease without humiliating. He can compliment without worshipping. He can disagree without becoming defensive. He can show interest without abandoning his own standards. And most importantly, he doesn't rush to fill every silence. When she pauses, he doesn't panic. When she takes time to respond, he doesn't immediately send 5 messages. When she disagrees, he doesn't suddenly change his personality to keep her happy. That emotional steadiness creates a different kind of conversation. It tells her without saying it directly, "I enjoy talking to you, but I'm not here to lose myself trying to be accepted." And that is a powerful foundation for attraction, because respect grows when both people are free to be themselves. So if you've been wondering why some men seem to effortlessly hold a woman's attention, while others struggle despite giving far more effort, start looking beyond the words themselves. Look at the emotional state behind the words, because the most attractive communication isn't about manipulating her mind, it's about mastering your own. The next thing most men miss is this: a woman can hear confidence in the way you speak long before she understands why she feels it. Confidence isn't talking louder, it isn't acting cold, it isn't pretending you don't care, and it definitely isn't trying to dominate every conversation. Real confidence sounds surprisingly simple. It sounds like a man who isn't afraid to say what he actually thinks. If she asks, "What do you think?" and you constantly answer with whatever you believe she wants to hear, you may think you're being agreeable, but over time she may feel that something is missing. There's no personality to push against, no perspective to discover, no sense that she is actually getting to know you. A grounded man can say, "I see it differently," and then he explains why. Not aggressively, not disrespectfully, just honestly. That creates something important: authenticity. Think about the difference between someone who compliments everything you do and someone who notices one specific thing and means it. "I like your outfit, is pleasant, but that color actually suits your personality. You seem more confident when you wear it, feels personal." The difference isn't manipulation, it's attention. You notice something instead of throwing out a generic line. And this principle goes far beyond compliments. When she tells you a story, don't immediately turn yourself into the hero who has every solution. Sometimes she doesn't need you to fix the situation. She wants to know whether you can understand it. You might say, "That sounds frustrating. What did you decide to do?" Now the conversation becomes deeper. You're not interviewing her. You're not performing. You're inviting her to reveal more of herself. That matters because emotional connection often grows through mutual disclosure. The more comfortable two people become sharing real thoughts, experiences, fears, ambitions, and values, the more meaningful their conversations can become. But there is another mistake men make. They confuse mystery with emotional distance. They think they need to disappear, delay every response, or act uninterested to make a woman wonder about them. That might create temporary curiosity, but it doesn't automatically create healthy attraction. There is a much stronger kind of mystery. It comes from having a life she hasn't completely discovered yet. You have goals she doesn't know everything about, friends she hasn't met, interests that exist whether she is around or not, opinions that aren't copied from hers, a future you are building with or without romantic validation. So when you talk to her, you aren't desperately trying to keep the conversation alive because your entire emotional world depends on her attention. You're simply sharing a part of your world with her, and that changes the energy. She begins to wonder about you naturally, not because you played a game, because you actually have depth. That's the communication style worth developing. Speak clearly, listen deeply, disagree respectfully, compliment specifically, ask questions because you genuinely care about the answer, and never confuse being desirable with being unavailable. The strongest man in the conversation isn't the one who says the most impressive thing. It's the one who remains completely himself while making the other person feel comfortable enough to become more herself too. That combination, self-respect and emotional presence, is far more powerful than any scripted line. There is another communication habit that quietly separates emotionally mature men from men who are constantly trying to prove themselves. They know how to challenge a woman without trying to defeat her. Now understand the difference. Challenging someone doesn't mean insulting her, embarrassing her, or intentionally creating jealousy. It doesn't mean turning every conversation into a competition. Healthy challenge means you're comfortable enough with yourself to have a real opinion. If she says, "I could never live in a small town," and you happen to disagree, you don't have to instantly say, "Yeah, me neither." You can smile and say, "I actually think you might change your mind if you spent a month somewhere peaceful." Suddenly, there's something to talk about. You've introduced curiosity, and curiosity keeps conversations alive. The mistake many men make is believing that agreement equals connection. But if you agree with everything simply because you want her approval, eventually the conversation can become flat. She may know you're interested, but she may not feel like she's discovering a real person. You don't need to manufacture disagreement, you simply need the courage to express yourself. And when she challenges you, stay calm. This is where emotional strength becomes visible. Imagine she says, "I don't agree with you." An insecure response might be, "Why are you always arguing with me?" A defensive response might be, "You just don't understand." A confident response could be, "Fair enough. Tell me why you see it that way." That one sentence changes the entire dynamic. You're not surrendering, you're not fighting, you're curious, and curiosity communicates security. The same principle applies when she teases you. If she says, "You're definitely too serious," you don't need to immediately defend yourself. You might laugh and say, "Maybe, you seem determined to investigate." Now the interaction has playfulness. You're participating instead of reacting. That emotional flexibility is incredibly attractive because it shows that your confidence doesn't collapse the moment someone challenges your image. But there is an even deeper layer. A woman can become more emotionally engaged when she feels that conversations with you have substance, not because you're constantly trying to impress her, but because you can move beyond surface-level topics. Instead of asking only, "What do you do?" ask, "What made you choose that?" Instead of, "Did you have a good weekend?" try, "What was the best part of it?" Instead of asking, "Where do you want to travel?" ask, "What kind of place makes you feel completely alive?" Questions like these invite stories. Stories reveal personality, and personality creates emotional texture. But remember something important. Never use deep questions like a psychological trick. If you're only asking because you want her attached to you, eventually she'll sense the performance. Ask because you genuinely want to understand the person sitting across from you. And give her the same opportunity. Share your own stories. Talk about mistakes you learned from. Talk about goals you're pursuing. Talk about moments that changed your perspective. You don't need to reveal your entire life immediately. Emotional intimacy should develop naturally, with trust and mutual comfort. The goal isn't to make her obsessed. The goal is to become the kind of man whose conversations leave both people feeling more understood than before. That is the real secret. When a woman talks to you and feels respected, challenged, heard, amused, and free to be herself, she doesn't have to force herself to remember you. The conversation remembers you for her. Here's where communication becomes even more powerful: emotional timing. A lot of men know what to say, but they don't know when to say it. They rush when they should listen. They joke when the moment requires seriousness. They give advice when she only wanted understanding. And sometimes they become intensely emotional because they interpret a small change in her mood as a threat to the relationship. A grounded man learns to read the moment without becoming controlled by it. Imagine she comes to you after a difficult day and starts talking about something that went wrong. Your first instinct might be to solve it. You should just quit. You need to tell them off. You should do this. But sometimes the most powerful response is much simpler. That sounds exhausting. Do you want me to listen, or do you want my opinion? Think about what that communicates. You're not assuming, you're giving her a choice. You're showing emotional awareness without pretending to know exactly what she needs. And if she says, "I just need you to listen," then listen. Don't secretly wait for your turn to speak. Don't turn her story into a story about yourself. Don't compete with her pain. Let her finish. That kind of presence is rare, because modern communication is full of interruptions, distractions, notifications, and people waiting to respond instead of actually listening. When someone feels genuinely heard, the conversation can become memorable. But emotional timing also means knowing when to step back. If she becomes distant, you don't need to interrogate her. Are you mad at me? Did I do something? Why are you acting different? Do you still like me? One after another, these questions can turn uncertainty into pressure. Instead, you can communicate calmly. "You seem a little quieter today. If something's bothering you, I'm here." Then give her room to respond. You've acknowledged the change without creating drama around it. And if she genuinely needs space, respecting that space is not weakness, it's maturity. This is where many men misunderstand attraction. They think constant availability proves devotion. But healthy connection isn't measured by how quickly you abandon everything whenever someone wants attention. You can care deeply and still have boundaries. You can be affectionate without becoming dependent. You can be responsive without being permanently on standby. And you can miss someone without making them responsible for your emotional stability. That balance changes the way you communicate. Instead of speaking from fear, you speak from choice. Instead of thinking, "What can I say so she won't leave?" you begin thinking, "What is honest, respectful, and true to who I am?" That question can transform your relationships, because when you stop trying to control another person's reaction, your words become cleaner, your compliments become more sincere, your boundaries become clearer, your affection becomes more meaningful, even your silence becomes healthier, because it isn't being used as punishment. And if you want a woman to feel safe enough to become emotionally closer to you, remember this: safety doesn't mean agreeing with everything she says or accepting every behavior. Real emotional safety comes from consistency. Your words match your actions. Your interest matches your behavior. Your boundaries don't suddenly disappear because you're afraid of losing her. And your kindness doesn't disappear because she disagrees with you. That consistency creates trust. Trust creates openness, and openness gives attraction room to grow naturally. So don't become obsessed with finding the perfect sentence. Become the kind of man whose communication feels calm, honest, attentive, and emotionally grounded. Because the right words matter, but the man behind those words matters even more. And now we reach the part most men never hear. The way you respond when you don't get the reaction you wanted reveals more about you than the way you speak when everything is going perfectly. Anyone can sound confident when a woman is laughing at every joke, responding quickly, and showing obvious interest. The real test comes when the energy changes. Maybe she disagrees with you. Maybe she needs space. Maybe she doesn't return your feelings. Maybe she simply isn't interested. This is where a mature man becomes different. He doesn't punish her for saying no. He doesn't become insulting. He doesn't suddenly switch from affection to hostility. He doesn't try to make her jealous just to prove that he has options. He accepts reality with dignity. And strangely enough, that response can make your communication more powerful because there is no hidden threat underneath it. You're not being kind because you're expecting a reward. You're being kind because that is who you choose to be. There's a huge difference. If she says, I don't think we're a match, you can simply say, I understand. I appreciate you being honest. That might feel too simple to a man who believes he has to fight for every romantic opportunity. But self-respect is knowing when effort is meaningful and when effort has become desperation. You cannot talk someone into genuine attraction. You cannot debate someone into wanting a relationship. And you should never try to manipulate someone emotionally into staying. What you can control is the quality of the man you become. That means speaking with purpose. When you care, say it. When something bothers you, communicate it. When you disagree, explain it. When you make a mistake, own it. When someone crosses a boundary, address it without cruelty. And when someone chooses not to continue with you, let them go without destroying yourself. That emotional independence is powerful, because now your conversations aren't built around fear. You don't have to calculate every message. You don't have to pretend you're busier than you are. You don't have to manufacture mystery. You don't have to disappear for 3 days because somebody online told you it creates attraction. You can simply live your life, and when you speak to a woman, you can give her your genuine attention because you're not using the conversation to fill a hole inside yourself. That's the kind of communication people remember. There's also something else, warmth. Some men hear advice about confidence and become emotionally cold. They think being mysterious means never showing affection. That's not confidence. If you enjoy talking to her, tell her, I always enjoy our conversations. If she did something thoughtful, acknowledge it. That meant a lot to me. If you're proud of something she accomplished, say so. You worked hard for that. You should be proud. You don't need to hide genuine appreciation just because you're afraid of appearing too interested. Healthy confidence can be warm. It can laugh. It can compliment. It can admit uncertainty. It can say, I was wrong. It can say, I missed you. It can say, I care about you. The difference is that these words come from choice rather than emotional dependence. That is the balance. Strong enough to stand alone, open enough to connect, confident enough to be honest, kind enough to listen, and disciplined enough not to manipulate. So if you want your conversations with women to become more memorable, stop asking yourself, what can I say to make her obsessed with me? Ask a better question. What kind of man would make every conversation feel honest, interesting, and emotionally safe? Build that man, because when your communication reflects genuine confidence, curiosity, warmth, and self-respect, you stop chasing reactions. You start creating connections. And that is far more valuable than making someone temporarily obsessed with you. The final lesson is simple, but it can completely change the way you approach women. Stop trying to find the sentence that makes her obsessed with you. Instead, become the man whose presence gives her a reason to remember the conversation. Speak with confidence, but stay kind. Show interest, but don't abandon yourself. Listen carefully, but don't become afraid to disagree. Give compliments, but make them sincere. Ask meaningful questions, but never treat someone's emotions like a puzzle you're trying to manipulate. And most importantly, understand this: attraction is not control. A woman's feelings belong to her. She may connect deeply with you, or she may decide that you aren't the right match. Your job isn't to force an outcome. Your job is to communicate honestly and carry yourself with self-respect. The strongest words often aren't complicated. I understand. I appreciate you telling me. I see it differently. Tell me more. I'm interested in getting to know you. I respect your decision. Those simple sentences can reveal emotional maturity because they come from a man who doesn't need to perform. So remember the equation. Confidence plus curiosity plus respect plus authenticity equals meaningful connection. Now make it personal. What part of that equation do you think you need to strengthen most? Confidence, curiosity, respect, or authenticity? Write your answer in the comments. And if this message gave you a perspective you needed to hear, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who needs this reminder.